Hi everyone, this is Jessica Borza. We will begin our webinar promptly at 1 o'clock. Talk to you then. Hi everyone, this is Jessica Borza with the Mahoning Valley Manufacturers Coalition. We will get started just here in a minute or two. We still have several others registered who are in the process of logging on. So hang tight and we'll get started here in a minute. Again, this is Jessica Borza. I'm the Executive Director of the Mahoning Valley Manufacturers Coalition, and I am pleased that you could join us this afternoon to gather more information about a recent grant award, the Workforce Opportunities for Rural Communities Grant. All right, So the first thing we want to do is just kind of take a roll call virtually here, and this will also get you used to using the chat box in the GoToMeeting software. So could you please enter your name and your organization in the chat box? You may see this as labeled as the question if you're looking at your control screen, and you can just use the little arrow to expand it so that you can then open up the chat box and enter your name. We'll just look and make sure those are coming through here. All right, thank you. I'm seeing names come through, so welcome everyone. We're also going to use the chat box to field any questions that you might have. So please go ahead and use that. We'll monitor those and have left ample time at the end to be able to answer those questions. We've also gone ahead and muted everyone on phone just to eliminate any background noise. We do have a large number of attendees today, so we will be using the chat box as the only way to answer questions. At least for today, there'll be plenty of opportunities for us to communicate with you and have more personal interactions. But for today, that's the way that we'll manage it, just to make the best use of everybody's time. So thanks for understanding and thanks for cooperating with that. See lots of good attendees from a number of our partner organizations as well as manufacturers throughout the region. So welcome everyone. So the purpose of today's webinar is really to provide all of you with an overview of the Greater Oh-Penn Region's RS4 project. And we'll talk about what it is, what our goals of the project are, how we'll measure success through the metrics that we included in our grant proposal, and how we'll use the grant funds. We also definitely want to make sure that you leave here understanding how you can play a role within this grant project and what responsibilities will come along with that. And so, discussing how you'll be involved, how you can be involved. We'll preview some early next steps and obviously answer any preliminary questions that you may have. So let me first start by talking about what the opportunity was that we decided to pursue. So this was a grant initiative that came through the Department of Labor and was in conjunction with the Appalachian Regional Commission. So they had two targeted geographies for this particular grant opportunity, and because Ohio and Pennsylvania, or portions of Ohio and Pennsylvania fall within the Appalachian region, we were eligible to apply. As any grant opportunity, the grantors through the Department of Labor and the Appalachian Regional Commission did have some specific goals in mind, objectives in mind. So the first was to address the specific skill needs of both businesses and workers in these regions. The second objective was to develop workforce development solutions that are aligned with existing economic development strategies. So really making sure that workforce solutions were thought of in support of the economic development strategies within our communities. The third, it was to promote new and sustainable job opportunities and long-term economic vitality. So we'll talk a lot throughout this webinar today about what that means for us and how we proposed to fulfill these objectives. A note about the opportunity. So when the grant request came through, we basically had a range. So proposers could choose to propose from anywhere from $250,000 to $2.5 million over 3 years. So we decided to name our project the Greater Oh-Penn RS4 project. And what that represents is replicating, scaling, and sustaining sector-driven successes in the Greater Oh-Penn region. And some of you have heard me joke that RS4 was just a way to save some space on our 10-page limitation. But you'll hear us refer to this particular project somewhat interchangeably as the WORC project, W-O-R-C, or the RS4 project. So here are some specifics at a high level of our grant project. So we decided to once again propose as an interstate region. So we have involvement from counties on both sides of the border in Ohio and Pennsylvania. You'll see the 11 counties listed on your screen. And we proposed for the full amount at $2.5 million over 3 years. We actually had to whittle our budget down to reach that $2.5 million budget, believe it or not, because we proposed quite a bit of activity over these 3 years. Just some statistics about our competition. There were 182 applications submitted. There were only 18 awarded, and we were one of only 3 to receive that maximum amount of $2.5 million. We also happen to be the only grantee in either Ohio or Pennsylvania, so we feel very fortunate and pleased that we were able to have a competitive proposal, a winning proposal. Our initial focus is going to be on manufacturing, building on the successes of our sector partnerships in manufacturing, but then we have proposed to replicate some of these practices, including sector partnerships in healthcare, in the later portion of the 3-year time frame. So our partners for this project include those sector partnerships, as well as our workforce development boards. I should note here, we're going to go into a greater description of the roles of our partners later in this webinar, but did want to recognize the West Central Job Partnership, and in particular, Eric Carmacy, for their role acting as applicant and fiscal agent for this project. So they will be the lead point of contact with Department of Labor, and we'll make sure that we are getting all of our reporting in and doing basically what we said we were going to do. We also have partners in economic development, as you may imagine, given the fact that we are, one of the objectives of this particular opportunity was to create greater alignment with economic development. So we want to make sure that the channels of communication are strong there and that we're creating as much alignment as possible. We'll also be partnering, as usual, with our education and training providers, and they'll have a number of opportunities to play a role within these projects, as well as our adult basic literacy and education partners, providing remediation and so forth. Community-based organizations that play a really pivotal role in these projects, as well as philanthropic organizations and our state partners who are always there to provide us support and guidance. The sector partnerships, I think, assume that there'll be a strong role for industry, both manufacturers and healthcare providers, but it's worth noting that obviously, as in all of our sector partnership work, we really recognize the role of industry and will take their lead and direction as we shape and refine our plans throughout this project. I want to say we had really strong support from partners in each one of these categories through our grant writing process. We decided to pursue this a little bit late in the game, and I just want to thank all of you very much for providing very thoughtful and strong letters of support that showed your commitment to playing a role within this project. I think that spoke very well for our region, and I'm sure added to the competitiveness of our proposal, so thank you for that. So, sector partnerships, as I mentioned, are going to play a strong role in this project. We really proposed our sector partnerships as being the infrastructure and providing the leadership for the project. So we have 3 existing manufacturing sector partnerships throughout the region now: Mahoning Valley Manufacturers Coalition, the Erie Regional Manufacturer Partnership, and the Great Manufacturing, or Great 8 Manufacturing Partnership, which was formerly known as the Northwest Pennsylvania Next Gen Partnership, and then a placeholder for healthcare to be determined and to be named hopefully later in the project. So the RS4 project is going to use the sector partnerships to provide that infrastructure and leadership to align workforce development strategies with economic development plans. And so we've got 4 goals that we proposed. The first is to strengthen and systematize talent pipelines for manufacturers and healthcare providers. So really looking at where are the sources of talent pipelines and how can we make those more systemic and systematic for our manufacturers and healthcare providers. We also, along with that, want to assist more young people, dislocated workers, and those in low-wage positions to pursue skilled living wage employment opportunities in both manufacturing and healthcare. We want to support advancement of these individuals or your employees along career pathways to support their skill development, to contribute to the business's goals, but also to support the advancement of those individuals, and strengthen alignment of our community partners around a set of regional priorities, and improve the capacity of the systems to be more responsive to businesses and individuals alike. So you'll see some of that capacity building kind of baked into what we're doing. So the approach that we're taking to this is to really scale promising practices. So here's what this means in non-grant speak. Basically, as we read the request for proposals and we thought about the building blocks and things that we thought were showing promise, showing some good initial results throughout the 11 counties, we decided to focus in on these two aspects of work and figure out how we can take some of these promising practices to scale. So what that means for us is focusing on both talent pipelines and advancement strategies, and in the we're focused on two strategies for each. So talent pipelines, we're looking at both the high school level and pre-apprenticeship programs that we've seen in a variety of forms throughout the greater Oh-Penn region, as well as WORKADVANCE, which we'll explain, but being a pathway or a pipeline for career switching adults or those maybe working in low wage positions who haven't considered manufacturing or healthcare before, and equipping them for entry into those career pathways. And then advancement strategies, and it isn't a typo that WORKADVANCE is listed twice. We'll get to that in a minute, but WORKADVANCE has both a component of recruiting and preparing new entrants into our targeted sectors, but also looking at those employees with potential and helping them to advance a step further and kind of embedding advancement strategies within all of the thinking and program design there. And then, of course, building on apprenticeships, which have been such a big critical focus for us throughout the greater Oh-Penn region over the past 4 years, building upon some of the work and models that we've created and sustaining them through this opportunity. So we'll talk a bit about the high school pre-apprenticeship program and the WORKADVANCE program. So I'm just going to go ahead and get right in there, as well as the advancement strategies in both of those. So let's start with first the high school pre-apprenticeship program. So the promising practice here is really structuring a program that is focused at the high school level and gives these high school students a more defined connection with our local manufacturers and actually with our local healthcare providers. So in this case, we have one model that was piloted just this past year that was focused on high school career and technical students and had some selection criteria. So they had to have certain attendance requirements, they had to have certain grade levels, their instructor needed to recommend them. So they had to be, at a fairly high level of performance to even be eligible to participate. And then manufacturers opened their doors between the summer between the student's junior and senior year to hire them on and give them a summer work experience. The student wages were reimbursed to those manufacturers in this case, and we have built in some wage reimbursements at 50% for this particular grant project as we look to scale that. What we found was one thing that was a key to success was having work-based learning coordinators. So these were individuals from the school who were available to monitor the work sites, ensure that it was a meaningful experience for the students, and then to address any concerns or questions that came up from the company or the students throughout the process. So really being a resource and a support to both the company and the student. This was an official pre-apprenticeship program. So in each state, there are some guidelines that to be designated as a pre-apprenticeship program need to be submitted to the state. And then with that comes some credit toward graduation and an official certificate for the student. It also means, though, that to be in an official pre-apprenticeship program, only companies who offer registered apprenticeships are eligible to participate. Now, I think this is actually a good thing for a couple of reasons. One is we have found through this experience that students were really interested to know companies did have registered apprenticeship programs. They saw that as a really positive thing because it was an indication to them that these companies were willing to invest in their employees' continued advancement. And so not that they expected to be an apprentice right off the bat, but just to know that companies were willing to support their employees as they continue their skill acquisition and do it in a formal way through apprenticeship made them, in the student's mind, kind of a premier employer. And so they were happy to go and spend their summers and hopefully stay attached to those companies. From the company standpoint, it also gives these individuals, gives companies access to these really high-performing students. And so there's an incentive, I think, to consider registered apprenticeship, and we'll talk about resources that are available to help you to do just that through this as well. So our intention is to build upon that. That's just one model. We also know of other models throughout the greater Oh-Penn Manufacturing Apprenticeship Network footprint, where other high schools and career and technical centers are doing things with students throughout the school year and in different ways. And so we'll be looking at those other models and hope to network everybody together to learn from each other in the process. The other thing that we learned from the experience, though, is that the employers who participated were really satisfied with the experience, so much so that they are continuing the relationships with those students now that they have gone back to school for their senior year. Some of those pre-apprentices are working after school and on Saturdays. Some are going back now over the holiday break. And so that's exactly how we. And then the hope is that upon graduation, that there will be full-time employment and a stepping stone to those full registered apprenticeship programs. So that's one aspect of our talent pipeline work that will be done with this grant project throughout the next 3 years. The grant funds through this R4 project will support planning costs. So we are looking to expand to other schools who were not part of the pilot. And so there is some initial work that needs to be done to get your program situated and to get it approved through your respective state. And so certainly we'll provide technical assistance and link you with schools who have already been there and done that. But we also will support a little bit of that planning time. We also, as I mentioned, built in 50% of the student wages, and the employers will be reimbursed for that during that prescribed time frame for the pre-apprenticeship work-based learning component. And we have provided stipends or wage reimbursements for those work-based learning coordinators as well to support their time if that's needed, particularly if it's going to be during a summer experience. So that just gives you a taste of the support that you might expect if you're interested in participating either as a school or as a manufacturer or healthcare provider in the pre-apprenticeship program. And then just to give you a sense of what we're looking for in terms of our metrics, again, these are labeled summer, but really just looking at the years, the 3 years of the grant. So we're starting small and looking to scale at a pace that we feel would be manageable. Possible that we could do more, but right off the bat, we're looking at 2 schools and 15 students and 10 companies for the first year, and then essentially doubling that each year thereafter. And so looking for a total of 6 schools, 45 students, and 25 companies. And that, I'm sorry, that's in the 3rd year, but the totals would be 12 schools, 90 unique students, and 25 unique companies. Okay, so the next The next program in terms of talent pipeline that I'd like to talk about is WORKADVANCE. Hopefully you've heard about WORKADVANCE. Many of you who are on this call have really been rolling up your sleeves and helping us to implement this. We have piloted this model now in the Mahoning Valley and also in Erie in Pennsylvania. And we're looking to take it to scale and expand it throughout the 11 counties through the course of this project. WORKADVANCE is an evidence-based strategy, which means that there's been a high level of evaluation rigor that has gone into this. This was originally a national pilot program, and Northeast Ohio was one of, I think, 4 sites throughout the country that was given grant funding over a 5-year period to try this out for the first time, understand and learn some lessons along the way and refine it. And fortunately for us, we've got a resource in Cleveland in Towards Employment who served as that initial pilot site, but also has really learned a lot and has served as an advisor to us over time, even as we've tried to replicate that locally. So let me talk a little bit about what this is for those of you who have not been involved with WORKADVANCE to date. So there are some key components to the WORKADVANCE model, the first of which is deep employer engagement. So, we'll be selective about the companies that we'll be working with for this particular project. We want to make sure that we have companies who are committed to fostering cultures that support advancement. We want to make sure that, really what that means is that there's a clear internal career pathway for your employees, that they understand what that is, and that you're willing to support them in their advancement with that. For some companies that have participated in our early work, they didn't really have a clear internal career pathway, but they were definitely committed to creating one. And so that was part of the work and part of our commitment and technical assistance to, really unpack what it means to advance within a company, what those opportunities are, and what skills and competencies are necessary for an employee to move from, one rung of the ladder to the next. We would be looking for commitment from our participating companies, and what that means is identifying somebody who can champion this internally, advocate for the program, understand what it means to foster that advancement and support that, but also to provide feedback to our project team so that we are really being responsive to the needs of the company. The commitment also means that there'll be wages paid during training. We have also included grant funding to support this at a 50% rate, but there is a commitment that you'll be paying participants 50% during that grant intervention, and that you will interview and hire completers out of the program. The companies that have participated so far have found this to be a really great source to get at individuals who wouldn't have otherwise come through their doors, particularly in the tight labor market that we're finding ourselves in. I think it forces us to think differently about who we're considering for employment. And this program really allows us not only to identify individuals who haven't worked in manufacturing before, but to ramp up very quickly and prepare them so that they can contribute from day one on the job. So it requires first enhanced recruitment. So working with an extensive community network to get the word out about these good jobs that are available and this wonderful opportunity to get prepared for jobs in manufacturing. One of the things that we talk an awful lot about is, long gone are those days where you could just simply walk into a manufacturer, fill out an application, and be hired the next day. We know that there's a certain level of skill that is required, and so that is our goal within this project is to target individuals who have some work experience, but maybe they're working in retail or fast food, and they really don't know how to get from here to there. So we'd be targeting those who are working in these low-wage jobs that don't have advancement potential, and would be working through our community partners to encourage them to consider manufacturing. We'd be supporting that grassroots approach then with social media and news releases, we also have seen good success with companies who might be still getting some of those applications from individuals who don't quite fit the bill yet, but they show some potential. And so you can refer individuals back to the program, and then we would be able to consider those and take them through the program and turn them back around to you, more ready-made than they were upon the day that they set foot in your office. So then we would take those applicants that are generated through all of that recruitment effort and take them through a screening process. So this includes an application for the program. We want to make sure that there is a fit. We would also have a minimum score for math. We do have a math refresher included within the training, but we know that there's kind of a minimum level that is necessary. This is going to be, more of a reminder of what you learned and knew, not necessarily teaching you for the first time. So there'll be a math test, an interview for fit, making sure that there's a commitment to manufacturing and to having a career in manufacturing. And then drug screening we know is important, so that would be done before acceptance into the program as well. And so all of that would be done on behalf of the participating employers at no cost to you as part of the grant program. The Career Readiness Workshop then would be the first step for those who meet the criteria and essentially make the cut from the screening process. Those who are accepted would receive a math refresher and then a focus on successful workplace behaviors. So starting to talk about what it means to be successful in manufacturing and how to, solve and be successful on the job. From there, they'll be entered into paid technical skills training. So we would work as part of the employer engagement upfront with the participating companies to understand the particular jobs that these individuals will be hired into and what the skills and competencies are that would be required for success. And then we will work with a local education or training provider to package that up and provide it in the most streamlined and efficient way to really accelerate their training while not shortchanging it. We want to make sure that it's got enough time to be able to acquire the skills that are necessary for success on the job. And then one of the things that I think really makes this program, the WORKADVANCE program, unique is the aspect of career coaching. So career coach will be assigned to individuals participating in this program from day one. They'll start by doing some goal setting with them, thinking about what their circumstances are now, and start to really identify their strengths, focus on those strengths, and focus on job success while also troubleshooting any issues that might arise through the training and through the early days on the job. So there's a lot to this program, but it's really about weaving a number of different aspects of workforce development together. It involves a number of partners, so we'd be drawing on a number of partners to play various roles within this program and leveraging a number of different resources. And then we'll use this grant to basically fill any gaps that don't exist already within our community. So what that means is that the grant funding will cover the overall coordination of all of those projects or all of those partners to support the WORKADVANCE portion of the project. We would be working with the companies to consult with you to understand your internal career pathways, as I mentioned. We have enhanced recruiting, so really getting the word out and through channels that might not be as strong or don't exist today. So figuring out how to make sure we're getting to people that would be who are just not finding their way to manufacturers. If the grant funding would support the screening, as I mentioned, as well as the career readiness and technical training, the costs of those, and then 50% of the wages during that training with the employer paying the other of that during the training costs or during the training period. And then the coaching and support services. We also have been working in our pilot communities with our workforce development boards to bring to bear some workforce dollars to help support additional on-the-job these individuals who complete the program come to the doors of our manufacturers or healthcare providers and become employees, we know that the learning doesn't stop. And so there are public resources that come into our community that are available to support a portion of that on-the-job training period so that you can continue to mentor those individuals and provide their additional on-the-job training. So we'll be working to make sure that that is available. So that's the recruitment part, or the talent pipeline part of WORKADVANCE. But as I mentioned, this is a two-part strategy, and so there's also an advancement component to WORKADVANCE. So with this, we also want to help our participating companies to identify employees with potential. So ideally, these would be individuals who were hired through the WORKADVANCE program and received that entry-level training, but it could include others as well, existing employees that you think have potential. And so our goal is to, once again, identify what is it going to take to equip those employees who have potential with the skills and coaching that is needed to get them to that next level. And so then we would work with an education and training provider to customize a program to the specific needs that are identified by those participating companies and provide some short-term training to accelerate their advancement, along with providing them also with career coaching and, a career coach who would help them think about, what it means to advance, what do they need to do to be successful on the job and to get to the next level. And then, work through things like, getting along with your supervisor or communicating with your coworkers, some of those other soft skills that maybe we don't talk as much about, but are equally important to success on the job and certainly to advancement on the job. So that would be the advancement component of the WORKADVANCE program. And for this, we have grant funding that, again, would help with the coordination of that, the consultation with the companies about what those are that are needed to advance, what those career pathways are, and doing some master planning, if you will. This short-term training can also be a stepping stone to the full-blown apprenticeship program, so helping companies to think through what that can look like so that you're not just supporting this next level of advancement, but ongoing advancement through apprenticeship and other means. The grant funding will pay for the technical training and also will pay for the career coaching. So as we think about the goals of WORKADVANCE, we have some metrics as we plotted out our strategy during the grant writing process. We needed to think about what would be feasible to take this to scale. And so what you'll see on the screen is basically our plan for cohorts throughout the 11 county regions. So I'll just start, you can see in the yellow, the Mahoning Valley represented, Mahoning, Trumbull, and Columbiana counties. You can see the quarters of the grant. So we have 3 years, so 12 quarters. So that's what's plotted out across the top. And then you'll see the number of participants that we're looking to serve in each one of the classes and the number of companies, which I think are pretty modest. We're seeing more companies participate, but that'll give us some minimum goals. You'll also see that there's a dark box around some of those participants. What represents those would be advancement cohorts. So for example, just taking Mahoning County, we have planned 2 entry-level cohorts and 1 advancement cohort for Mahoning County. So that would equate to 24 individuals who are completers. And then once they complete, they also will receive post-employment advancement for as many as 18 months. And so that's why we've really front-loaded the activity in years 1 and 2 of our grant project to allow for that coaching to continue well after they're on the job and hopefully advancing on the job. So that's how you can think about and look at the other geographies within our 11 county footprint. I'll say that we anticipate that this could change. There could be some flex if there's a lot of momentum and excitement in one area and maybe not as much in another. We can definitely move to that. But our goal is to replicate this and help to build the capacity throughout the entire region and touch all 11 counties and all of the sub-communities within. So our total participants we're looking at through the WORKADVANCE program are 200. That would include approximately, I think, I'm not seeing the total here, 104 new individuals and 96 incumbents. Well, we're also for a minimum of 24 unique companies to be involved with us during the course of the program. Okay, so our other advancement strategy that we've done a lot of work with already, but we want to continue over the next 3 years, is to build on the experience that we've had through the American Apprenticeship Initiative, or AAI. Many of you have been involved with that, so we thank you for that. We want to continue to support you as companies to enter more of your employees into the apprenticeship program. And that will include building upon the existing group-sponsored models in machining, welder fitter, and industrial maintenance. We also are able to continue to leverage that other grant that we had to support this. And so we continue to have $3,000 per apprentice that are available to participating manufacturers to support and offset the cost either of the related technical instruction or the on-the-job training. So just a reminder that that's still available, and that we would look forward to either helping you to register new apprentices, or if you do not have a current registered apprenticeship program, we are able to provide you with the technical assistance to walk you through that and get a program set up or get you plugged into one of these existing programs that I mentioned. So our goals for this grant we'll be looking to support the completion of apprentices that started through the other grant. And so we would anticipate about 35 of those apprentices completing during this extended period with the new grant, and then an additional 45 additional apprentices to be entered into the program during this 3-year period. So that takes us to the overall goals of this grant and some of our measures of success. So this is kind of a cumulative of all of the strategies, both the talent pipelines and advancement strategies that I described to you. So in total, we'd be looking at serving 355 participants, 51 employers, but really spelled out to the grant evaluators that it wasn't as much about quantity, but quality, that we really wanted to work pretty intensively with those employers. We expect that we will develop some new programs as we work to customize some of the training through the WORKADVANCE program and elsewhere, which would result in new curriculum. We also definitely see a goal to increase the training capacity. So bringing more training providers into the conversation and then networking them all through a learning community. Both our training providers, but also our community-based organizations who are involved with the WORKADVANCE program, and really all of our partners, so that we can be learning from each other through this. We also always see our goal as trying to increase the ability to address the needs of our employers, so continuing to on that and bring other partners to the table to design more responsive and flexible solutions for our employers, and that our partners are committed to aligning services and resources and taking that continuous improvement approach along with us. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but I thought you might be interested to see our outcomes that we provided. So we had the metrics there as our overall goals. These are both qualitative and quantitative outcomes that we spelled out. So you can see, qualitative measures are really about making sure that we have the right manufacturing leadership, that we have partners engaged in our employer outreach, eventually that we start to also identify healthcare champions and start to identify their needs. And then with the quantitative measures, really putting some numbers to all of that. So short-term outcomes there within the first, say, 18 months. Midterm outcomes you'll see on your screen next. So making sure that we continue to bring our economic development and community development officials to the table and really bring them and knit them into our sector partnerships. I think we have varying levels of participation and great support from economic and community development, but there's room to make that even stronger. And so that would result in greater collaboration and communication. And also seeing that across the sector partnerships. So how can we really work with our partners ERMP and MVMC and the Grade 8? We'll eventually see how healthcare sector partnerships organized and partners, again, aligning their services to be responsive to those needs and priorities in both manufacturing and healthcare. Again, you'll see some quantitative measures that we'll be using as benchmarks and milestones along the way. And then long term, and this even goes beyond the life of the grant, I think, these are our lofty goals of increasing coordination and alignment among economic development, workforce, and community development leaders, and then building the capacity of all of our partners to continue to do this work and to do it in new and better ways. And then obviously we want to sustain that in every grant project. Our goal is to make sure that the things that are working continue to live beyond the grant dollars. And so we'll be very intentional about that with this grant as with others. And in fact, they asked us to spell out what those sustainability strategies would be. So even as we were putting our proposal together, they're asking us to begin with the end in mind, which I can appreciate. And so these are some of the things that we're thinking about. We want to continue to sustain our sector partnerships, of course, so that can be done in a variety of ways, but certainly membership contributions is a great way to sustain and provide matching funds for other opportunities. With the youth pre-apprenticeships, we could see a scenario where schools really are embedding the coordination and administration into their regular activities. We believe that there's going to be so much value by creating this intentional talent pipeline that our manufacturers are going to, see that value and pay the summer students or pre-apprentices at 100% after the wage reimbursements are over. Same with the WORKADVANCE program. We are basically giving our participating companies an offset in the cost of the wages during this grant period, but we hope that there'll be so much value that they'll want to be a desire to continue and assume 100% of those wages. We also really want to continue that capacity building to make sure that, for example, new methods in career coaching, focused on individual strengths, focused on advancement. Once the partners really understand those techniques and that kind of content, those career coaching methods can live well beyond the grant as well. And then our apprenticeships, we will continue to work to advocate for state and local policies in support of apprenticeship funding and provide technical assistance to companies so that you all can develop internal capacity to continue those apprenticeships internally. So I'm going to just, in our bit of final time here before we turn to questions, talk a little bit about roles and responsibilities. So I'll start with West Central Job Partnership. As I mentioned, they are serving as the fiscal agent. That includes being conduit from the Department of Labor to all of the sub-awardees and individuals, organizations that will have contracts. They also most likely will be administering the wage reimbursements, so you'll have direct interaction with them if you're an employer and participating in any of these programs. They'll serve as the what we're calling project operations manager, and so Eric Parmacy will be serving in this role, just making sure that we have the T's crossed and the I's dotted, and that we're in the overall right direction. and they will work with the subawardees and subrecipients, basically those under contract, to ensure that we're being effective in our implementation, we are delivering on our objectives, we are in compliance with the federal regulations, and that we are achieving the performance that we set out to achieve. So thanks again to Eric and team at West Central Job Partnership for agreeing to serve in this role. The Mahoning Valley Manufacturers Coalition then are taking the lead role for the overall partnership coordination. So we will be, for example, doing project plans and action planning with all of the partners. We'll be coordinating with the sector partnerships and leading the business engagement strategy. We won't be doing all of that ourselves. We'll have partners to be involved, but we'll be helping to coordinate that. Same with career pathway development, building we've already done, and doing some of that internal career pathways building with our companies. We will continue to provide technical assistance and administrative support for the apprenticeship programs, and same with the pre-apprenticeship programs, so working with the schools and our participating companies. We will continue to serve as the group sponsor for the registered apprenticeship program. So what that means is that MVMC really serves as the sponsor of record, and that simplifies participation for companies who want to use one of those existing programs. It's kind of plug and play, and we do a lot of the work for you. So we'll continue to do that. And then we also will be working with the partners to make sure that we're collecting the right data and we're reporting both the data as well as lessons learned and successes to the Department of Labor and the Appalachian Regional Commission. I mentioned towards employment earlier when I was describing the WORKADVANCE program. We are fortunate to have them with us as partners. They will be helping us with the overall coordination of all of the pieces and parts of WORKADVANCE, and providing technical assistance to our partners along the way, and helping us to improve partner communication. And that's definitely a big lesson learned in our early pilots, both in Erie and the Mahoning Valley, that because there are a lot of pieces and parts, we want to make sure that all the partners have the right amount of information at the right time to stay coordinated and provide a seamless experience to our companies and to our participants. Which leads us to our community-based organizations. They really have proven to play a vital role in WORKADVANCE. So these are organizations like our community action agencies and Goodwill and others who are leading both the grassroots recruitment efforts, but also providing some of that career readiness instruction and the ongoing advancement coaching. Education and training have a variety of roles that they can play within our 4 strategies. The WIOA Title II providers, you might know them previously as Adult Basic Education. They basically are going to help us with that math brush up, and we'll be contextualizing it, basically using manufacturing examples as they are helping to refresh, provide that math refresher. Our community colleges and adult career and technical centers will be able to provide the technical aspects of WORKADVANCE. They also can continue to play a role in apprenticeship to provide the classroom instruction to support that. And our high schools and high school career and technical centers obviously will be looking to them for pre-apprenticeship coordination and to help us with outreach for our other programs as well. So obviously not limited to these roles, but these are the ones that are most prominent as we think about this project. Workforce development boards are really our key partners in this, along with West Central Job Partnership. And you can help us by assisting in recruiting participants. They've got, big reach with the job centers and Ohio Means Jobs and CareerLink. They can help us to streamline access to those workforce resources. They have committed to providing resume and interviewing instruction as part of the WORKADVANCE program, and can help to look at policies in support of the various RS4 components as we look to scale and sustain them. Economic development is going to be really important, just to make sure that we're using the RS4 strategies as an opportunity to increase alignment and communication between economic development and workforce development. to make sure that residents benefit from these opportunities and also ensure businesses have the talent that they need to stay strong and grow. So next steps, then questions. So we've got some organizational and administrative work to do just to, in light of project ramp up. So just making sure all the staff are in the right place, that we are contracting with various organizations, that we're identifying organizations that want to play a part in this. And then we need to also think about data collection and some of that boring stuff that's really important to make sure that we're capturing our success and being able to report our strong activity. We also then, when it comes to community partners in this, first quarter or two, we want to facilitate discussions among those existing sector partnerships about the best way to organize ourselves. So we could, for example, create action teams to focus on various portions of this work. I mentioned the idea of learning communities, networking the people that are doing this work throughout 11 counties together so they can learn from each other. And then to support that, we'll create more detailed action plans that can help us to just make sure that we're staying on track and doing what we need to do to be successful. And then we will be looking at solidifying which communities are going to be starting points, both the WORKADVANCE program and the PRE-APPRENTICESHIP program, who wants to be our early adopters here, and then which companies have interest in participating in each one of those programs. So with that information, we'll update our projections and our project plans accordingly, and then we'll engage the appropriate partners to review the model, make sure that everybody understands the role they're playing, and update our plans accordingly. So in the meantime, here's what you can do. So certainly help us to identify manufacturers and eventually healthcare providers. We're looking at folding healthcare in 2021, but there'll be some legwork to do between now and then. But focused on manufacturers first, who might be interested in participating in some aspect of this. I know we actually have a number of manufacturers themselves on the phone today, so we definitely want to hear from you if you are interested in learning more about any of this, so that we can begin to engage you and get you the information you need to decide if you want to participate, particularly in the early stages. For everyone, let us know the role you can see your organization playing in any of these strategies. We want to make sure that we're being as inclusive as possible and getting everybody into the fold. Think about ways that you can also help us with outreach and getting the word out about these programs so that we can get the individuals in our talent pipelines. And then be thinking about other ways to increase alignment between economic development and workforce development. We're including our project team here, and so you can see our general roles listed. We'll all be working very closely together, and certainly there are other members of our team working on different aspects that we'll be coordinating with. This webinar, by the way, is being recorded and will be available for future reference, so you'll have our contact information available to you as well. Okay, so now we're going to turn our attention to any questions that may come up. I've been kind of monitoring as we've been going through, and I want to just make sure. So we've got one question that came into us, and the question is there an approximate amount of time your team feels should be dedicated per student that is enrolled in a pre-apprenticeship program in regard to the work-based learning coordinator? Thank you for that question, Rebecca. So I'm trying to remember, and maybe we may have some of our work-based learning coordinators on the phone today. I think what we ended up landing on is kind of a rule of thumb that there was a visit to the work sites at least once every 2 weeks. So that might help you a little bit of a sense. That was in the summer-based program. So, and that the length of that program was 8 to 10 weeks. So that'll give you a little bit of a sense. In some cases, we had more than one student placed at a particular work site, which obviously makes it a little bit easier for the work-based learning coordinator. And they also were, pretty strategic about grouping where they visited geographically just to make the most of their time. So thank you for that question. We've got another question. Once the healthcare sector partnership is organized, could you use the NEO healthcare model that was developed as, let's see, the rest of it got cut off here. I'm going to guess that the rest of that is, could you use NEO healthcare as a model to kind of build from? And I would say yes. So for those of you, who might be familiar or maybe aren't familiar, NEO Health Force was a sector partnership that existed back in, if I had to guess, back in 2002 in the early days. And actually, the ERMP and MBMC were organized following that model. So I would definitely, from my standpoint, see that as an opportunity to go back to the things that worked really well about NEO Health Force and then fold in some of the things that maybe we've learned since then. So I definitely think that could be a building block and was a bit of what we had in mind when we thought about replicating in healthcare. Okay. I'm just looking. Any other questions? Again, you can use the chat box to be able to provide us with those questions. We'll also follow up with any of you if there are questions that come in afterwards, or you can definitely email us with those questions, and we'll be sure to get that information out to all of you. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions come in, so I hope this is the beginning of many conversations that we will have to come. I think this is going to take everybody's greatest thinking and greatest efforts at collaboration to accomplish what we're setting out to do, but I think it's a huge opportunity for us to take to scale what is working and be able to help other manufacturers and healthcare providers and individuals throughout our 11 counties to be able to succeed and grow. So we appreciate your time this morning and look forward to working with you. You know how to get a hold of us if you have ideas, thoughts, questions in the meantime. And as I said, we've got some early work to do over the course of the remainder of this calendar year. And then I think you'll start to see the activity pick up after the first of the year. So we will definitely make sure that the communication channels are open, and we'll get more information out to all of you who are interested in learning more. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great afternoon and have a great weekend.